Ever since its inception, COVID 19 has been a topic, sensed, felt, and experienced, where it came up as a pandemic world across, taking lives, causing discomforts, and above all, everything terrible never experienced by our generation or previous two generations. For world, its emergence had been a theory unexplained. All we are left with is a question that can a cold be deadly? And can a virus be so empowered?
A very good afternoon and a warm-hearted welcome to all present here. Our beloved Director Sir, whose presence and perseverance has taught us to be enlightened and awakened all times and learn by all means. Our school principal Sir, Mr. Vivek Gupta, who believes in us and has always supported us in finding our worth and explore the vicinities of knowledge.
I am equally delighted for the presence of our school's headmistress ma'am, Miss Kavita Mehrotra, who has motivated us in exploring new and creative means of work and presenting our ideas most thoughtfully. Along with, I am glad for the presence of our senior wing head, Miss Neha Gupta ma'am, who has been rigorously working in guiding us in attaining perfection in whatever work we undertake.
I would also like to welcome the delightful presence of Dr. Anil Arora, Dr. Praveen Suman, Dr. Veronica, and Dr. Neeru Arora. Dr. Anil Arora is a renowned persona associated with Sir Ganga Ram Hospital, New Delhi, as the chairman of Institute of Gastroenterology and Pancreatobiliary Sciences at Sir Ganga Ram Hospital. He completed his education as MBBS, DNB, Medicine, MD, Medicine, and DM Gastro from the prestigious All India Institute of Medical Sciences. Dr. Arora has a vast profile with lots of achievements attached to his profile. He has been writing articles for national and international journals and has been a spokesperson in various webinars concerning human health and well-being.
Dr. Praveen Sharma is Director, Child Development Clinic at Sir Gangaram Hospital, New Delhi, and Dr. Veronica is Assistant Professor of Medical Genetics at Sir Gangaram Hospital. Dr. Neeru Arora is Senior Gynecologist at Noble Medicare, Janakpuri. We are glad and honored to have your esteemed present with us today. Thank you so much for joining us here. We couldn't have Dr. Veronica due to some urgency. Thank you.
And along with, I would like to welcome our school academic coordinators, teachers, and lovely audience who are part of this enriching event. Thank you so much, everyone, for being a part of this event.
In all times of difficulties and challenges, Bal Bhavan Public School has sought to find solutions to help fight problems. Our dear late founder chairman sir, Shri G.C. Lagan, had always taught the lessons of perseverance and taught each one to fight till one finds solutions and success.
It is his indomitable courage and energy that pulsates in each Bal Bhavan night that we still stand strong, no matter how gruesome the situation may be.
COVID-19 has emerged as fear, a terror amidst people world across, where for some it had passed unnoticed, for many it had been fatal. There have been theories about its variants and transitions. It was assumed that where its first wave had been deadly for elderly, it caused much harm to youngsters in its second wave. And now there are premonitions of its dire effects on kids in its third wave. Is it really so? If yes, how well are we prepared?
For parents, it's worrisome. Is this just an assumption or really a fact? To throw some light on the same, we are pleased to have the presence of such eminent and experienced doctors who would throw some light and solve our ever-emerging queries related to COVID. I would like to request our audience to place their grievances in the Q&A section of this platform, which shall be addressed during the session. So, with not much ado and delay, let me request Dr. Anil Arora to please take the charge and enlighten us with your theories and inferences. Sir, please.
I am extremely grateful to Dr. Mrs. Kavita and Mr. Vivek for having given us this opportunity of interacting with you. And you have such bright young children who were posing such difficult questions. I think as faculty members, I don't think we are, totally knowledgeable in answering these naive queries, but we'll try our best to be true to what we know of professionally. Thank you so much for your very ludicrous and flattening introduction for all of us. Unfortunately, Dr. Veronica could not join us today because she was stuck up with the care of a sick patient, and I'm sure she'll be adequately covered up by Dr. Veronica and Dr. Praveen Suman and Dr. Neeru in her place. So what we have decided for the purpose of clarity is that we have divided the talk into two components. First is we'll request Dr. Praveen to tell us how is it that we have got such a wealth and sea of knowledge about COVID-19 in adult literature. Is it just mechanically and simplistically possible to put it down to the pediatric population, or you think children are not small adults? They are on their own, they have their own individual personalities, behavior, and response to the incoming pathogens and immune system. And I'm sure all of us realize it is not the physical characteristics of the height and weight which makes children different from adults. Children have their word of own, thought process of their own, and their brightness, their young mind, their inquisitive mind certainly puts them in a different category altogether. To cater to all those, first I'll request Dr. Praveen to tell us, do we have a realistic view of third wave coming? Is it likely to come? And if it comes, Dr. Praveen, can you just tell us how bad it is going to be and how our children different from adults? Dr. Praveen Suman, please.
Yeah. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Arora, and thank you, Mrs. Kavita and Mr. Gupta, for giving us opportunity to share our knowledge so that children and the parents can be benefited. So I would like to share my screen to give you a brief overview about the COVID in children. Just it's already shared, or
yeah, we can see it. Yes,
you can see it. Just a second. Okay.
Now it is
gone. I think.
It is gone.
Sorry.
You have double clicked it. You have to come back again. It was available there, not now.
Acha, just 1 sec.
Share it again.
Okay, give me 1 second. Now it is fine?
Yeah, now it is okay. Yes.
Okay. So, as Dr. Arora said that we are worried about the third wave, and kids are also little children who were comparing, they were also worried about the third wave. Let's first understand. Is it not full screen?
Yeah.
Is it coming as a just?
It's visible, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now it is okay. Yes. Now it is full screen. Yes.
Okay. So as everyone, including the kids, are worried about the third wave, let's first understand what is wave. As we know that pandemics tend to occur in waves. What does wave means? Wave is when large number of cases occur together. So what happens, as we have seen, when initially the COVID came, a lot of patients were getting affected, and there was a lockdown, and then it gradually settles down, and we started following COVID appropriate behavior, and suddenly we left all those behaviors, and there was a new strain came in the picture, and there was again a surge. So this wave will continue till most of the population will get immune either by the asymptomatic or symptomatic infection. That means till the time when herd immunity is achieved, waves can come. So although there is a chance the third wave can come, but we do not have the exact predictability of timing and the severity of the third wave. So this will happen till the time disease either will die out or become endemic in the region, with the it will persist in the community, it will not go away, but it will not affect the lot of people together. That is wave. So in case it comes, are the children at greater risk? This is the most common question at this moment. So as we have seen in the first wave, most severe infection occurred in elderly and individuals who had the comorbidities. And in the second wave, younger age group were also affected, and also those who did not have comorbidities. So, but during these two waves, sero surveys has shown the percentage of infected children were around 25%, which is same as in adults. That means children were also getting affected during the first and the second wave, but they were not getting the severe disease. So that means in case the third wave comes, there is a likely to infect all those remaining who are non-immune, which will include children also. So we must understand that there will not be a thing like it is going to exclusively affect the children. Then fortunately we are very, our children have relatively less affected so far due to several factors. The most important factor is that there is a lesser expression of specific receptor, which is called ACE receptors, to which the virus binds and enters the host and the immune system. So in children, it is seen there is a lesser expression, so children are affected less. So there is a reason, biological reason why children are affecting less. So till the time we have this virus strain, first and the second, it is not affecting children much. They are getting either asymptomatic or milder infection. Only a small percentage is getting moderate to severe disease. But if whenever the wave comes, there is a massive increase in overall number of infected individual, and then large number of children are also affected, and also the number of moderate to severe increases. So when do we suspect that there is a COVID in children? As we are now quite aware about the symptoms, signs and symptoms in adults, some of the symptoms are same as in adults, like they do get fever, headache, mild body ache and tiredness, and they can have cough, sore throat, rapid breathing. There can be gastrointestinal symptoms in children. Very commonly it has been seen. They have diarrhea, vomiting, and in younger children, feeding is a very important parameter to show that if a child has developed any infection for that matter, and if there is any presence of rash, conjunctival congestion and mucosal involvement, which I'll be talking later on also. And if there is an asymptomatic patient but has a close and household contact with the COVID, then we must suspect COVID in a child and they should be treated as per the guidelines. Then according to Indian Academy of Pediatrics, the disease has been classified into 3 categories: mild disease, moderate disease and the severe disease. In mild disease, it is only the patient is getting fever, sore throat and running nose, vomiting, mild vomiting and diarrhea and cough, and no other symptoms, which is seen in almost 80 to 90% cases. And moderate disease is seen as if there is an associated fast breathing and presence of hypoxia. That means saturation is dropping to 90 to 94% on room air. Severe disease is classified in when there is a presence of pneumonia, there is a increased respiratory effort, child has difficulty in breathing, and there is a noisy breathing. Then there are other signs like feeding difficulty, child is not feeding well, there is a severe diarrhea, dehydration, grunting, severe retraction. So all these features should be an indicator of severe disease. Then critical disease, for sure, when there is a underlying shock or multi-organ involvement. This happens when there is an acute infection. But in children, a different entity has been seen, which is commonly not seen in adults, which is named as multi-system inflammatory syndrome. You must have read about it also. This is most of the parents and teachers should be aware about this problem, because this is not seen during the acute illness. This is seen after the 2 to 6 weeks of symptomatic or asymptomatic infection in a child, and it happens due to the immune dysregulation in the patient. The body behaves differently, and although it is rare, it is seen in, if the incidence is 1 to 2 per million population, but they can become severe. So it is very important that awareness should be there, and it is a treatable condition with a very good outcome provided they are treated well on time. Otherwise it can be fatal. So very important that we must be aware what are the signs and symptoms and warning signs, which I'll be discussing. And also remember, during this time, most of the time children is not transmitting the infection. Child has already developed the antibodies. And what happens in multi-system inflammatory syndrome is that there is a persistence of high-grade fever, or there is involvement of rash, body, other organs, or there is a rash in the body, conjunctivitis, lymphadenopathy, or there is a severe diarrhea, loose motion, vomiting, and abdominal cramps, kidney involvement, heart involvement. So there can be involvement of different organs. We must be aware of this, and as soon as there is a high index of suspicion, the patient should be taken to the hospital and should be hospitalized. Then comes the question, whom should we test? In case of children, if they get the infection, whom should we test? The testing is recommended ideally for all the suspected cases, but prior to any procedure or hospitalization. But if, as we know, we have a limited resources, so it may not be at times possible to test all the asymptomatic and infected children. So in that case, children who are asymptomatic contacts and has mild symptoms, or the one who do not have any comorbidities in the form of heart disorder or renal disorder or any other problems or any disability, and there is a history of positive family members, such children should be presumed to be COVID-19 infected and should be managed on the guidelines of the COVID-19 infection. In children, we are worried about the infection and the transmission of infection, but at the same time, we are worried about the overall well-being of a child, which include the social well-being, emotional well-being, and the mental well-being of the child. We have seen during this time, children are isolated, they are not getting to meet their friends, their social interaction has gone down, they are at the home, and emotionally they are in the fear, they are living in the fear of uncertainty and what will happen in the future, whether they'll contract the infection, what will happen to the, and there is so much information on the social media, and they're getting too much negative information about the mortality and fatalities, which is affecting the mental well-being of a child. And it has, literature has shown there is a high incidence of anxiety, depression in the adolescent and the younger age groups. And along with that, a lot of child abuse and violence has been observed during this time. So as a caretaker, as a teachers, as a pediatricians, as a parents, it's our duty not to look into only the infection part, but the well-being, so that we can minimize the long-term effects of the COVID in children. This I have already discussed, that there is a high incidence of anxiety and depression in children and young adults. Last but not the least, children has to be taught the COVID appropriate behavior, especially by parents have to be the role model in wearing mask properly and using a hand sanitization, maintaining social distancing, avoiding crowded places, and the mask has to be appropriate in size, and cloth has to be, it has to be 2-3 layers. It is not that just a simple cloth is hanging, and it has to be tightly fit. So all these precautions has to be taken care. So COVID appropriate behavior has to be followed so that we can minimize the infection later on. And thank you so much. The questions.
Yeah. Dr. Praveen, can you stop sharing? Yes. Yeah.
I've stopped. I've done that.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Praveen, for very nice, elaborative and dogmatic presentation on status of COVID-19 infection, if ever it were to come to the pediatric age group. We had divided the talk per se in different components, and Dr. Veronica was supposed to talk about the status of the vaccination. Since she's stuck up with a sick patient, so can we rope in Dr. Neeru Arora to answer some of the question? Dr. Neeru, do you think this third wave, which is likely to come in India, do you think it is a realistic expectation or it is just a media hype?
I think time will tell. If, like Mr. Mohinder Agarwal, who is from IIT Kanpur, had given us the assumption that depending on the data we have, that we can have wave later on around October to February, he had predicted. But these things, they depend on the exactness of data which is available, and really we don't have proper data available. And second thing is, if we keep taking good precautions and our government is able to vaccinize most of the people, I think we'll be able to avert third wave.
You see, after all, the very reason that people have been hopping about third wave is that, first of all, we have been really befunded by the second wave. All of us were really up in our arms that we have won the battle. You know, even health ministers said that we had a vaccine guru in Narendra Modi and we have won the battle, without realizing that we were just trying to put the horse ahead of the cart. We were not sure that we have really won the battle till we were really absolutely devastated with the ravaging perfidious virus, which stuck us down starting in February in Maharashtra and then traveling at a very brisk pace into Delhi, and then it is spreading towards the northeastern region of the world. Thereby meaning that even if we think we are smarter enough to take over the virus, but we should realize that virus with the minimum machinery at its command is still able to show the human beings its worth, making it realize that nature is made for everybody, not as a human being alone. So we are not sure that we are not going to have a third wave, but the way the data has been presented, I think maybe Dr. Praveen, you would like to say, is it overhyped or you think we should be ready for it?
As the media and everyone is worried mainly about the kids, you know, as I discussed in my presentation, that children are affected even in first wave, but they were affected in second wave also. But fortunately, children are getting asymptomatic or the milder infection. And we are in fact more worried about the multi-system inflammatory syndrome, which happens 2 to 6 weeks after the infection. And very rarely children get moderate to severe infection. So once we are aware about the warning signs and we are following the COVID appropriate behaviors, and if we are vaccinating the most of the population, then I think we should not be worried. We should be prepared. No doubt about it. We should be prepared if anything happens, because it is a virus. It can mutate in any way. We do not know how it is going to behave. So we have to be prepared, but we should not panic at this moment. We should be very, very hopeful and creating things in a way that things can come to the normalize as much as possible.
Yeah, very aptly put in by Dr. Praveen Suman that there is a fight between the virus and the human beings. This happens once in a century. The last pandemic had occurred way back in 1989 and 1919 by this virus called Spanish flu virus. This will keep happening again and again, possibly more frequently than what had been happening in the past. Since it is a question of survival of the fittest, it is like a fight between the people who are hackers versus people who are expert in preventing the cyber crime. one tends to have one upmanship over the other. It is between a fight between the police and the thief, depending upon who is smarter of the two to wriggle out of the difficult situation. If we know how to prevent the virus with vaccination, virus is smart enough to mutate itself. After all, it has to survive as much as human beings have to survive. So as Dr. Praveen very rightly said, that since major chunk of our population has either been exposed or inadvertently infected or clinically infected. So we are not sure, because we do not have a good seroprevalence data as to what percentage of our population is still predisposed to infection. Then coming back to Dr. Neeru, because most of our children possibly have not been exposed, and since the first wave primarily affected people above 60 and 45 plus with comorbidities, and all of us are also aware of the devastating effect of the second wave, particularly in younger people who are healthy between the age of 35 to 50 years. Are we sure that we are left over with totally unsuspected pediatric population which has not been affected with first and second wave? Do you think that could be the fodder for the virus in the third wave?
I don't think so, because infections, they are creeping up in the families, and it has been shown in Ahmednagar, like they had done zero surveillance on 10,000 kids, and they found out that 90% of the kids were asymptomatic and they didn't have any infection. So if we do proper studies, we'll be able to know how many kids are already exposed. That is very important, because kids are in the family and infections are happening in the families only. So it is very important that if we do zero surveillance, then only we'll be able to come to know that whether these kids have been exposed or they are still vulnerable to infection.
I think you put it very well, ma'am, that unless you have a data of, India is a huge country. We have problems of economy, the cost, our manufacturing capacity to produce vaccine, our data recording. Being a poor country which is still in the development phase, we cannot have a robust data to bank upon and give us good prediction of the models, as has been mentioned by Dr. Neeru, that Mr. Mahendra Agarwal from IIT Kanpur has been trying to tell us that possibly in mid-October we are going to land up with the third wave. But unless in that mathematical model you are able to feed in robust data, it's like garbage in and garbage out. What do you get? So unless you have a good data on the total number of the cases, on the people who have been vaccinated, and whether they have developed antibodies or whether they have been asymptomatically getting protection because of the asymptomatic infection, we cannot have a good prediction of the model. But whatever is available, it is possible that a third wave may come. But I like to ask from Dr. Praveen, do you think it is going to be as ferocious and will come with vengeance as it came in, say, April 2021, and it is going to have a devastating effect? Do you think it will be that bad as it has been made as a hula bulla by the media?
I don't think so, but still we have to be very, very cautious, because we cannot, दूध का जला छाछ को भी फूक फूक के पीता है. So it is better to be cautious, and we have to take COVID appropriate behavior. We should not take risk. Whether if it comes or not, we have to take the appropriate COVID appropriate behavior plus vaccination, so that whatever infection comes, there should be minimum damage to the system.
Very aptly put in, once burnt, twice shy. So you have to be, even though it's not going to be a devastating wave, but we just cannot lower our guard. And I'm sure most of us have witnessed our plight of lowering the guard by celebrating, even at government level, that we have won the war over COVID, and we have had to bear the brunt of the problem in the middle of April, when we had a world record of 4.5 lakh cases per day which were happening in India. With that, having said that, I think it is important not to be worried about it, but certainly at the same time, as Dr. Praveen said, we should not lower the guard. So Dr. Neeru, what do you think? How do we now keep up our how do we keep on our guard up by either vaccinating the children or looking into the COVID appropriate behavior? What do you think about vaccination in children? Do you think is it feasible? Is it safe? Has any country already authorized its utility in pediatric age group?
In India, Covaxin has already started trials on kids in IIT, this AIIMS Patna, and Zydus is also doing. And China, they have already started vaccinating kids between 2 to 12, 2 to 15, and USA and Singapore and Hong Kong, they are also vaccinating kids. But problem is, since we do not have data which will support that vaccination is safe in kids, we should not start. Like Pfizer, they have done vaccination in Israel, and they have found out that 250 kids, they develop myocarditis. So they have already stopped vaccination in kids in Israel, and they are waiting for, another trial. So this is very important. Till we are 100% sure about vaccination safety, we should not start vaccination.
I think it's a very important, relevant questions for everybody to understand that development of vaccine and putting it to mass use is not a joke. It takes years together, decades together to come back with a vaccine which you can just put it to general public use without monitoring. If you look at the history of development of the vaccine, on an average, after knowing the genetic code of the virus or the bacteria, it takes 10 to 15 years to develop a vaccine which is effective and safe. You must be sure that if you're going to put in jabs in 7 billion population, the onus lies on the health authorities to be sure that it is effective, it is safe, and it has more utility than the side effects. To overcome all that hitches and the bureaucratic hurdles, you have to have excellent trials. If you remember, this genetic code of COVID-19 was published by the Chinese biologist only on 11th of January 2020. And hats off to the Herculean task done by the different companies involving the biochemist lab, the Pfizer and Moderna manufacturing hubs of the vaccination. This was the first time in the history of the world that you got a vaccine within months of discovery of a genetic code. And thanks to them, then today, if we know that only thing which can save us and our children is vaccine and vaccination alone. So Dr. Praveen, after learning from say adult experience, do you think it is time that we shift on our experience of adult vaccination blindly to the pediatric population, or we need to conduct more trials? As Dr. Neeru said, that at least in Israel, Pfizer found out that there were 250 cases of inflammation in the heart called myocarditis, for which they had to abandon the trial. What is your reaction?
So because different companies' vaccines are using different techniques, so I think it is very important. First, we have to make sure that they are effective in children, and then we should be following it. In India also, the trials have already been started with Covaxin and all, and let's hope the result comes out to be positive. So we are in a better situation to give to vaccinate our children also. I think it should not be followed blindly.
Dr. Neeru, what do you think that till the vaccine is available, you are all of us aware of the scarcity of the vaccine. You see, every now and then there are hair-splitting debates on media and television regarding the denigration of the government's vaccination policy as to who procures the vaccine, state versus center, private versus government, free versus costly vaccine. And this is an endless debate. I think to cut the story short, the problem lies in the availability of the vaccine. Tomorrow, Dr. Neeru, if you think the vaccine is available, do you think we are ready to vaccinate our younger children who have just not been vaccinated?
We should vaccinate our kids, but only after seeing the safety of these trials in our society, because every genetically different people, like we are different from US people, we have different from UK. So these tests should be done in our society in India, and if like bridging trials, what they say, in case they are good and safe for our kids, we should go ahead with vaccination for all our kids.
Dr. Praveen, there is a very relevant query which comes repeatedly that, you had first viral strain, which was naive virus, virgin virus. Then you tend to develop mutants, which were single mutant, double mutant, and finally we have a triple mutant, which has been even labeled as a VOC or variant of concern by, because
I think Dr. Anil lost connection. Adding on to it, maybe I can ask a question, ma'am. Since there is a vaccination thing going on and we are talking about kids, I personally have got vaccinated and I realized that, the repercussion of vaccination was like wherein for one complete day, my hand was stiff. I couldn't move for entire week. My hand hadn't been, I was not able to move it. And on the other hand, the second day of it, I developed a fever and was totally down in overall. So I was wondering, like, what if, like, if the kids are vaccinated, small kids specifically, 2 to 3 years kids, how are they going to bear the pain of it? Are we going to get some separate vaccine which is going to be painless for the kids, or something that is going to be very mild for the kids? What are your assumptions about it, ma'am?
Whenever we are vaccinating a child, we have to weigh the effects versus side effects. What is the use and what are the side effects? So when we see these mild side effects happen with other vaccines also, because as a pediatrician, if you see when you go for a small child vaccination, we used to give DPT and measles. There used to be a fever for one day and all the. So these side effects do occur with other vaccines also. But if these vaccines are proved to be safe, as Dr. Neeru and we have already discussed, first we have to do the trials and make sure these vaccines are safe for our kids. Once it is safe for our kids and with some local side effects or some fever and all these side effects, then they can be used. These are local side effects which can happen with other vaccines also. So we do not have to worry about these things. But before that, we have to make sure that the trials has been done.
And yet another question that comes to our mind about the efficacy of vaccine. So some say Covaxin is better than Covishield, some say Covishield is better than Covaxin, and then comes Pfizer out there, which has 97% efficacy. So what is basically this efficacy? And if I have been vaccinated with Covishield, and later on India also comes up with Pfizer and Moderna with greater efficacy, am I like restricted to Covishield with limited efficiency of 80%? So could you just throw some light upon that?
As far as efficacy goes, how effective is the vaccine? As it has been seen, most of the vaccines, Covaxins, it can be any vaccine, Covaxin, Covishield, Pfizer, Moderna, they are very, very effective. So you have to have a certain guidelines, then only the vaccine come into the place in commercial usage. It is not that it is not effective and it has been in the market. So FDA or the government proves only when it has a certain, it has crossed that certain, like it has to be more than 70% or 80% efficacious, then only it is present in the for commercial usage. As far as your question is concerned about Covishield and Pfizer, there has been studies, especially in Spanish study, they have seen that a person who has received Covishield and has been given a next dose of Pfizer or Moderna, it has found to be effective. So mixing of vaccine has also been seen in some studies. But as we have said, we are new in this field right now. There are a lot of trials going on, a lot of literature has yet to come. So once in another few months, I think things will be better off.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Dr. Anil has also joined in again. So, doctor, one more query I have, because recently I was viewing one video of some studies going on. Some doctors of foreign nation, they spoke about that this COVID has come up as a seasonal disease which emerges from January to December to April, and gradually it subsides, and there isn't a need of mask, there isn't a need of lockdown. So what do you have to say about it? Is it really true, or it is just an assumption?
You see, if you look at the behavior of this virus, there is a good relationship between the spread of the disease through the droplet infection and through the aerosols versus physical contact. I think enough of data has already been generated. For a country like ours, in which almost on daily basis you keep on seeing the fight between the center and the state and between individual governments and the various states, that vaccine is just not available. So what is the weapon we have? As Dr. Neeru had already mentioned, if you have a good COVID appropriate behavior, look at the way we have lost young human lives. So we should not go just by the hearsay. If somebody says, oh, you do not wear mask. So these are the people, there will be, 10% of the people even in the US who, in spite of extensive availability of the vaccination, they will not take it because they have own self-sustained beliefs, which may not be right. But you look at all agencies, all world authorities, everybody singularly says that even if you have had COVID, the virus is so smart, it outsmarts most of us as human beings. It tends to mutate because it has to survive in the human beings as much as you and me have to survive. So there is no question of doing away with masks till the last case on the world from COVID has been eradicated. It takes ages. So till then, simple appropriate behavior is extremely important. We shouldn't go by these videos and the hearsay. Classical example is from countries like Japan, Taiwan, and South Korea, where in Japan the total number of the cases which have been reported till date is around 800. They had contact tracing. They have a social taboo and culture of using masks. This is exactly where people like you and other teachers and the mentors come into handy to inculcate good habits amongst our children right from our primary education. Very difficult to tell the old people to suddenly start wearing masks. If you have inculcated those good habits, I'm sure they are going to take it forward in the future generation also.
And adding on to it, I would like to question, like in several countries, once a person has been vaccinated with both the doses, after 2 or 3 weeks, that person can go without mask. So that means, is he safe from COVID?
You see, I think Dr. Neeru had answered very well in the previous discussion that what we should understand the basic difference in the vaccination against COVID versus vaccination against polio or hepatitis B. COVID vaccination does not prevent you from having disease. It does not prevent you from having infection. It can prevent you from going from a mild to moderate, from moderate to severe, and from severe disease to death. It does not prevent the infection going on inside your body. Infection has to travel through the droplet infection and through the airways. And especially, as Dr. Praveen said, if you are having multiple mutants, who stops these mutants to enter your body? Vaccination does not prevent infection. That message has to go crystal clear. It can only prevent the severity of the disease. It can prevent you from dying. It can prevent you from going on a ventilator. It can prevent you from getting admitted in ICU. Be very clear about it. It prevents severe disease, not the infection. And hence, I'll reiterate with same monotonous tone that unless everybody is safe on the earth, nobody is safe. So till everybody gets vaccinated or incidentally or accidentally gets infected, we stick to the COVID appropriate behavior. That in country like India is the cheapest, best and time tested modality to prevent infection.
Yes, and this adding.
Pooja ma'am, I'll cut you short in between. I have another thing coming up in my mind. Since you have just mentioned that the school teachers and mentors can actually ensure the right and appropriate behavior, and we can train these young mind children, students at the school level itself to wear the mask at daily basis and prepare them for this particular thing. It just occurred to me, since we are talking about all these things, this is right that the appropriate COVID precautions and protocols need to be followed. But at the same time, sometimes since the second wave has already occurred and many of us have already got infected, there were questions coming up where we are asking doctors, if I am already infected in the first wave or the second wave, are there chances that I can also get infected in the third wave? Number one. Number two, what about the immunity? How can we improve our immunity to fight against the virus? Keeping in mind that it's been said that zinc and vitamin C tablets that really help boost up your immunity level. So since many of the parents and children are also there, so if you could just throw light on these two aspects as well.
First and foremost is that if you have had one infection, the chances of having another infection is extremely uncommon. In fact, there have been documented cases of a reinfection. And even if there is a reinfection, you have enough of immune system which has been boosted by your native prime infection, which would prevent you from having a severe disease. People who haven't had the natural disease and have got vaccinated may still die. But chances that if you have survived the first infection, the chance that you are dying is extremely low. That means first natural infection is the best bet. But then it is at the cost of 15% of the people will require hospitalization, and say even if it is 2% mortality, it is a huge mortality. That is precisely the reason everybody on the earth should be vaccinated. Why should we even lose 1%? You and me can be in that 1% who can have mortality. So that is extremely important. And second question is how long they should continue the COVID appropriate behavior. As I said, till, as Dr. Nehru said, till you have achieved a herd immunity. That means 70% of the population has been either vaccinated or 90% of the population has had antibodies, either because of the vaccination or because of the immunities which has been brought into the body by the natural infection. Till then, you have to keep up your anti.
That means even if I have got COVID naturally, still I need vaccination. There are chances that I can get COVID again and again multiple times till the time we can't, till the time there is even one case. So certainly. Now, yet another question that we would like to talk about, sir, since Dr. Nehru is here as a gynecologist. What about the women out there? So are we saying that some certain studies were saying that women are even safer in context to men in gaining COVID? Is there something of this sort coming up?
No, women are not safe, but chances of getting infections are less because most of the women, they are at home. Men, they go outside. Most of the men, they go outside and work. That is the reason men are more exposed to infection and women are not. But in case both are exposed, then chances of having infection will be same in men and women.
All right. Thank you so much, doctor.
I'll ask again one more question that many parents have been asking out there in the chat window. You know, there is one thing that is said that to fight against this virus, you need to keep your body also hydrated. And it is good that, you know, if you are taking, if your body is sufficiently charged up with the vitamins required to fight back as that increases your immunity. So how far these two things are related, and how do you suggest that, you know, keeping yourself hydrated and taking in the vitamins and other tablets, even to the younger children, can protect them from the third wave?
Yeah, we need to understand that there is a difference between a prevention and a treatment. Okay, so we are talking about how to prevent the infection in a disease. So to prevent the infection, it is very important we have to have a good immunity, and good immunity is based on 4 factors. One is include diet. There should be a good diet for the child. That should be home cooked diet rich in protein. Okay, right. Avoid junk food. Second is the sleep pattern. Maintain the sleep pattern, especially during COVID times. We have seen children are sleeping late at night and not getting up in the morning. So maintain the sleep pattern and follow sleep hygiene is a very important factor. Third is exercise, physical exercises, because most of the time we are at home and not doing any physical activity. Make sure that everyone, in fact, adults also should follow physical exercise regime, at least 45 minutes to 60 minutes in a day at home. Some activity can be based. And fourth is a mental health. Try to spend time with the children, work on their mental health so that they are at ease. There is no anxiety, there is no fear. All those things has to be taken care of. Excess of everything is bad. You know, too much of vitamin D, vitamin this and vitamin that is not good. We have children who are getting toxicity because of vitamin D's and all. So we have to be careful, give good home-based diet, taking care of if you are giving fruits and vegetables. So most of the time diet itself can take care of the vitamins. But if anything has to be given, has to be in consensus with the doctor's prescription, not just like that. Don't keep on giving tons of vitamins and, you know, this and that. That should be avoided.
Great. Thank you, doctor. I think that's a very, very precise information that you have shared. Parents, please note that do not take any vitamins or medication without the prescription of doctors. That's very, very important. So that's a very important message. And exercising, yoga, I think that's the norm today. And if we are indulging into these good practices, that is definitely going to keep us healthy. Over to you, Pooja ma'am.
Yet another question that we can see in Q&A section from our parents coming up about the layering of mask. Now, there have been studies that how long should be wearing mask, because continuously wearing mask, you are breathing in your own carbon dioxide inside. So is it safe to wear mask all day, or if so, then how much layers are we supposed to wear? So that is some questions that we can see in the chat. So Dr. Anil can actually throw some light on it.
Would like to answer that?
Sorry.
Dr. Neeru, you would like to answer that?
Yeah.
Well, how many layers and what type of masks for how long? What Pooja wants to know is, should we be wearing it inside the house, or if we go out for a stroll in the park, is it needed?
It has been advised that one should wear cloth mask which has got 3 layers. We should not wear cloth mask with the material which does not respire. Problem is like Vicryl or polythene. These materials should not be used for mask. It should be cotton cloth. And second thing is, if you are going to a very crowded place or workplace, one can use double layering. One cloth mask, another is surgical mask. And surgical mask, you should wear first surgical mask with crisscross at ear. And second thing is, it should be tight fitting. That is the most important thing. It should not be loose, and there should be nose pin which should be pressed when you are wearing the mask, and over that you should wear this thing. Important thing is wearing is of cloth mask, double layer is important, but how to dispose of is very, very important. You should change your surgical mask. Not more than 8 hours you should be wearing it. Not more than 8 hours.
I think, yeah, very scientific.
Yeah.
The very scientific basis, if you have to understand, is, it's the new virus. Almost on daily basis, we are trying to understand the mechanisms of transmission. Earlier, we thought the virus, after about 2 feet, 3 feet, it will have a it will have a flight, and then it will be settling onto the droplet, and then the virus will remain live for a few hours to a day, and then we know that it can remain suspended on small particles in the air called aerosols for as long as 2 to 3 days. So depending on how infective the surrounding is, depending on what is the infectivity of the individual, as Dr. Neeru said, you may require multiple layers of the mask. The more the merrier. But then you have a genuine concern that if you are wearing too many layers, then there will be a problem in expiring the unneeded carbon dioxide, and you will have a difficulty in breathing. That is the reason Dr. Neeru said that for after 8 hours, it is important to change over. And if you have to use one mask, N95 is the mask which is scientifically designed to prevent the passage of the virus, which typically measures around 10 microns. And this 10 micron virus usually does not enter through the pores in the N95 mask as compared to the cloth mask, which is much cheaper. That is the scientific basis.
Adding on to it, since you said that the virus remains in air for 2 to 3 days, can we say that this COVID could be airborne? That means the studies that was coming on that even if you are roaming out, you can catch this particular virus. Is it so?
Even though most of us do believe that it is an airborne virus, but still WHO and CDC, that is Center for Disease Control in US, still does not believe it. The reason for us to believe is if you look at the swathe of people who came with devastating virus in April and May in Delhi, it couldn't be droplet infection alone. It has to be airborne. And most of us at our heart do believe it is an airborne infection. Now, whether it is just a question of semantic, whether it is a small, big aerosol droplet versus a small droplet infection, for all practical purposes, it means the same thing. It is just a question of semantics. The question remains. Finally, I think the answer remains is that you need to have a social distancing, which should be at least 6 feet, and then you need to wear a mask. So more studies are needed at ground level to know whether it is a droplet versus air, but most of us as doctors do believe it is an airborne infection.
And yet another question that is there in grievances, they're talking about the generally we have seen that we have come up with one theory of cure, that is plasma theory. Then there was this remdesivir. Gradually it happens that one thing emerges and later on there is a emergency ban upon things. So what to trust and what not to trust in such situations? This is something that we would like to question about.
You see, it is an evolving disease. Tell me which other disease has established therapy within 1 year of onset of its genetic code. Knowledge about the genetic code was made available to public only on 11th January 2020. So after all, since so many people are involved, we should be thankful to the people who do genuine research by doing randomized control trials. And since it is an evolving disease, you can only make a decision final by hit and trial. Earlier, people thought that remdesivir is the cure. Then you realized if you give it too late in the course of the illness, it will not be effective. Then higher doses of steroids were tried, which led more to problems, something like mucor or black fungus, which we are seeing today. And it is more detrimental in the early phases of the disease. But as the disease is evolving, I think we have almost come to the conclusion that there are 3 phases of the illness. In the first phase, you didn't need nothing other than the conservative treatment. If need be, you can supplement it with possibly remdesivir. In the second phase, which is because of the immune stimulation, you have to give small dose of steroids, not high doses of steroid. And finally, depending upon your response, you may continue small dose of steroid. This is a disease in evolution, and I think scientists are doing a wonderful job in repeatedly publishing the changing guidelines, which is more for the benefit of the society rather than the ego of the scientists.
Yet another question that I would like to raise, doctor, since there is lack of vaccine facility out there. Suppose I got vaccinated with Covaxin today. After a few months, if Covaxin is not there, is there a chance I can take some other vaccine? And if I take a vaccine, how long it's I am immune against this COVID? That is one query and grievance I would like to address out here.
You see, this is a new virus, ma'am. We still do not know how long the antibodies, which is developed either by the process of the natural infection or developed because of the immunization, which is given as jabs. But we have a corollary to learn from this first COVID infection in the world, which was detected in Hong Kong in 2002, that is 2002. And from that, we know that antibodies may last for as long as 2 years. As of now, we believe that antibodies may last for anywhere from 6 months to 1 year, and we may require another jab, provided the virus does not mutate in between. And only yesterday there was a publication in Lancet that Pfizer vaccine has 50% less antibodies against the so-called Delta variant or a triple mutant, which has been reported from India. So this is an evolving field. So far, we know that it possibly does not have a long-lasting immunity.
And regarding its the way to cure it, can we take vitamin B and vitamin C on the regular basis just to keep ourselves immune against it, or stay fit onto this?
Dr. Parveen, do the children need supplements? Do the so-called immune boosting drugs pop up your immune system within the body?
There is nothing called immune boosting. We have to, as I have mentioned, we have to take care of the overall health and the well-being of a child by maintaining. If anybody who has a deficiency of vitamin C or B12 or something, it has to be corrected. But by giving or loading them with the vitamin C or B12 is not going to help. Anyway, that will wash out. So there is no point of overdoing anything. Maintain the healthy, balanced diet. That should be the underlying key.
I think
Yes, Dr. Praveen, there are two questions coming from the audience. I'm sorry, Dr. Anil. There were two questions that are quite related to what is being discussed here. The parents are asking, what about morning walks and cycling? How safe is it for the kids to go out and with the parents, maybe in the morning for the morning walks and for cycling only in a closed environment? Closed environment as in only with limited people around them. How safe is it?
As the cases are now going down and we are seeing that things are opening up, and we have already talked about if everything is happening in an open space, then it is a better this thing rather than in the going for indoor place. If the child is going for outdoor walk or not a very crowded place or cycling, I think any physical activity which is outdoor and not in a crowded place should be done.
Okay. And secondly, I think there are some curious children who have been stopped by their parents to not have ice creams. They're asking, is it okay to have ice creams during this time? So they want the answer from the doctors now.
There is not khatta, thanda. I do not believe in all these things. So definitely any child, if somebody is allergic to something, then it should not be taken. Otherwise, there is no absolute no's or yes to these things. They can take whatever they feel like. But when take care of the hygiene part, it is better if you want to give ice cream or some cold things, make it at home, and so that hygiene is maintained, right, rather than worrying about the cold and khatta and all those things.
Correct. So that please take a note, parents and children. Now you can have ice cream, but only homemade ice creams. That's the suggestion for all of you. Over to you, please. Carry on.
And yet another question is that since eligibility to get vaccinated is 18, so can we say it's to children between the age of 14 to 17 who are just going to be eligible? If the vaccine is given to them, is it going to be harmful to them, or they are going to get, they will be able to bear the, effects out there?
We cannot give vaccines without trial. It is not just like the US has given or some other country has given. Until unless we do not have a data from our country or trials has not been proved, we cannot give just like that. It has to be scientifically done. So it is undergoing. Let's wait for the results and then.
Till the time children gets 18 plus, they should wait out there. So that was certainly beautiful session. We had tried to cover up all the queries coming up here, and such an informative session on your part. Now I would like to hand over to Gauri to carry on the further event.
Thank you so much all. That was indeed enlightening and enriching experience. Surely with COVID, there came a lot of untamed and unfiltered knowledge. People have been in an utter chaos with messages circulating in various media platforms. And there have been doubts about the information gathered. I thank the panel of doctors for educating us with this informative session. And now I request our school principal, sir, to please address and advise the audience with his kind words. Sir, please.
Thank you, Gauri. Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, Dr. Anil, Dr. Neeru, Dr. Praveen. And I really thank all of you for making it to this afternoon. I think it's a Sunday afternoon and a very, very important and, a very talked about thing that we are talking here, and the ideas and the questions, the way you have answered, I think it has sorted a lot of queries in our mind. And I'm sure that the parents on the other side, the students on the other side are also feeling that it was a very, very informative session that has enlightened us all and let us know that the importance of eating right, sleeping right, and exercising regularly. I think these three things are the key words that I have picked up from this session today, and ensuring what Gauri has also mentioned, that let's not go about what we hear say around, let's not go about by WhatsApp messages, because there are a lot of rumors that are prevailing at the moment. Let's get to the right person to ask for our questions and queries. And I think all the three eminent panelists today, all the three doctors were great. And the way you have explained the entire idea of how it can impact the children during the third wave and how we can keep ourselves ready during before the third wave. I think that's very, very important. And as a school, I promise you that we will not let you down, and our Health and Wellness Club is definitely going to pick up certain more activities to indulge the students into yoga practices and ensuring that the children eat right. That's a promise from the Bal Bhavan team to all of you. And with these words, I thank all the audience, my dear teachers, and the people who have been associated with us during this 1 hour of session. Thank you so much.
And at the end, I am extremely thankful to Bal Bhavan Public School for having given us this platform to share our views and also get stimulated with the naive questions which were asked by the younger brigade. And I'm so proud of you being as the mentors and the teacher for really propping up young, anchors. And we would love to have them do medicine under us as we are all aging. Thank you so much.
Most definitely, Dr. Saab. I think we are all preparing our children into that direction, and with the need, the COVID-19 has told us that we need efficient and good doctors today. And I'm sure that under your guidance and supervision, we'll raise many more good doctors. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And all the questions which have not been answered by us, I'll request Principal Ma'am and Mrs. Pooja to note down all the queries. You can pass it on to us, and then certainly we'll make all possible efforts to give you the scientific answers with the current knowledge. Thank you and goodbye. I'm extremely thankful to Dr. Parveen and Dr. Neeru for really enlightening us with the latest knowledge of COVID vaccination and COVID status in pediatric age group.
Thank you so much, Bal Bhavan School and everyone. Thank you, and the young children and the principal sir and ma'am and everyone. Was very, very interactive session. It was wonderful being with you. Take care, stay safe, stay home.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, everyone. And with the conclusion of the event, I would sign off with a quote that doubts often haze the clarity. It's better to question and believe your own instincts and always hope for the better. We hope the session might have clarified most of the doubts and we have a clarity of what COVID really is. The light of hope might seem dim, yet it does end the darkness that surrounds us. With this, we would like to say goodbyes. Thank you everyone for a peaceful hearing. We urge you to stay home, stay safe, stay healthy, stay optimistic. Thank you.
And can I ask Gauri, why is it that virus keeps troubling us? Why cannot we live in harmony with virus? You'll have to give us answer next time then.
That's a wonderful question that you have raised, Dr. Anil. I think when we talk about harmony, let's learn to live in harmony with the virus as well.
We can fight as politicians, as your colleagues, teachers, doctors, but why fight with virus which has no entity?
Right.
Gauri will answer after some time.
It's only just that the nature is super powerful. We can't say we are just minute humans in front of nature.
That is precisely what I'm saying today. If you try to win the virus, if you have to try to capture the nature is made for everybody. It is made for plants, for human beings, for animals, for lions, for tigers and virus. If you want to annihilate everybody and try to live on your own, so this is what virus shows you. It shows you your worth on this planet. So let's respect the nature. With that final parting comments, I'll say goodbye and thank you so much for giving us this opportunity. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Saab.